Now we're going to look at baking vertex weights. What baking means is actually dialing in the existing values of every single vertex to how they're weighted to each bone and making that permanent and outside of the envelopes. Currently, the envelopes affect all of the weights of the vertices. If I make a change to an envelope size, it changes the weights of the vertices. You can only get so far, especially with the envelopes in skin, because they can't be adjusted all that much. Envelopes in something like physique are a little bit more controllable, but even still, you can only get so far because it's very much of a sort of a soft area effect type idea. You end up, if you need to change one vertice, even in a physique modifier, it's next to impossible without adjusting something else next to it a little bit. We need to be able to change vertices one at a time, and then in groups and whatnot as well, but you really need to be able to get down to a finite level of dialing in vertex weights. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to bake all of the vertices and essentially remove them from the effects of the envelopes. So with vertices, select vertices turned on, I'm just going to go in and select all of the vertices in the entire model. And then down here it says bake selected vertices in the skin modifier. When I bake those, you'll now notice that the weights didn't change, but now if I change the envelope size, you'll notice that there is absolutely no change happening anymore to the weights of the vertices. At this point, the envelopes have no more effect. We can always reset them and say reset selected vertices, and they're now reset back to actually be affected by the envelopes. You have a choice basically. You either affect your vertices via envelopes or you affect them in a weighting method. You can't do both. In other words, you can't use envelopes, paint weights, and then say reset selected vertices to have them included back to the envelopes without losing any paint weighting or ABS weighting on each vertice that you're going to do. That information will just be lost because you are back to the envelopes at that point. So this is a step. We've used the envelopes now to get us as close as we can. We've played and tweaked with them. We've got nice sort of soft joint areas going, but now we need to get in and actually dial in some specific vertice weights to specific bones to make sure that we're getting the kind of deformations that we really want. So again, I'm just going to hit bake again since I'd turned that off. And now what we can do is we can actually start painting weights. Once again, using our poses is the best way to start. And what I'll do maybe is I'll start with the arm here, since the arm is obviously having some troubles with the weighting going on. And what we can do is look at different ways of being able to adjust that arm to get it to deform a bit differently. Maybe work out how we can get it to bend a bit better. Right now, I've taken a look at it. If you notice when it actually bends, it's quite soft in the middle. It needs to actually be a bit harder. And of course, when it starts to fold up more, it starts to crash into each other. Well, this is going to be a very difficult character, like I said, to skin properly because all of these joints are very large. Thin, noodly characters are always the best kind of characters for beginners to start with because they're very easy to get the joints working reasonably well and looking pretty good. Easier to animate and everything, and of course lighter on mesh. More complicated characters like this one that we're using in the intermediate level DVDs, a lot more is required to be able to get your joints to actually start looking like joints, your muscles to start looking like muscles. So we're going to use multiple different methods to get some of this working properly. What we're going to do is, again, we're going to start with the ABS effect first. I'll show you how that works. Right now, if we go to the forearm bone, you can see its effect moves up to about here and then stops. Maybe we want to start including some of these vertices in the bicep area, so we push some of that out of the way. May not be what I want, but let's just use it as a test for now. With a single vertice selected and a single envelope selected, you've got ABS effect. Currently right now it says 0, so that vertice is not weighted at all to this bone. If I dial it up, you'll notice that it becomes weighted to it and starts pushing it out of the way. I've seen a lot of people say, wow, there seems to be a big problem, because once I dial it up to this bone and go back to the other bone, well, all the weight's been removed. Well, that is the case. With normalize checked on, and this is what you really need to have, is that a vertice can only be weighted up to 100% of all the bones affected it. So in this case, because this one was the one who had effect originally, and we've dialed it up to 100% on the forearm bone, it's now completely removed it from this one. So to get it back in, we're going to have to dial it back into the other one and find that happy medium somewhere. And of course, as soon as I ramp this up to say 0.8, you'll now notice that the forearm only has a 0.2 effect on it. Same with this new one I've just dialed in, and any others that I do the same thing with. But you'll see now that when the arm bends, it actually starts pushing some of those vertices out of the way as well, and they don't crash as much or look as sort of rigid when it does. So this sort of effect would have been very hard to get to have that kind of individual control using the envelopes. What we need to do now is we need to go through every single vertice basically in this elbow and try and weight it out in some way that'll make it work a little bit better. Things like your end of your elbow, if you feel it, it actually moves more with your forearm. So when your forearm moves, that elbow bone, the little bump in the end, should move down around. It shouldn't stay somewhere in between. Now, we have to make it do that, and it would also be nice if there was a bit of skin sliding across it, but we're not going to deal with any sort of skin sliding possibilities in the intermediate level DVDs. Using ABS effect is very slow and time consuming, especially on a character with this many vertices. What we're going to do is we're going to look at using paint weights to be able to paint the weights of the vertices in so that we can actually affect large areas with a soft brush so we can get nice fall-offs. Paint weights has a dialog you can open up, just like any of the painting options in Max. And a couple things I like to set to begin with. Update on mouse up, because without it, it becomes quite slow. If it's trying to interactively update the weight of every single vertice as you brush over it, it's doing a lot of calculations. I prefer to turn on update on mouse up, do your brush stroke, and make small changes slowly. It will only update as soon as you let go of the mouse all at once, and it becomes much, much faster to work with. Also, your maximum strength. Currently right now, if I were to paint weights, and I'll press the paint weights button, I'm painting a maximum strength of 1, and that really is going to make big changes to the weighting of the arm. What I want to do is I actually want to set it up so that it's pretty small, and I tend to set it up so it's actually very small, sort of a 0.02 effect. So when I paint weights, it's very, very small and just subtle changes. Or maybe I actually dial it up to about 0.07 and then make the changes. You can also affect the size of the envelope, or the paintbrush, and of course there's hotkeys for all this as well. So hotkeys are Control Shift and scrub them down with your left mouse button for size, and Alt Shift for the weight, and you can see the weight go up and down. Like I say, I like to keep my weights down really low, 0.02 and 0.07, and maybe sometimes I start going up into 0.1, 0.2 if I know I really need to add a fair bit of effect. Of course, if I know I'm just going to be adding 100%, I could just grab them all and dial up ABS effect, or I could just, set it to a value of 1 and just paint across. But now you can actually see when I paint this, I can actually affect nice soft areas and start adjusting the weights in a nice smooth fashion. I'm actually going to set it up a bit to 0.7 because it looks like I want to do some fairly large changes to this. And I tend to go around now and just slowly start making changes and see what I'm getting out of it, what sort of effect it's having on the character's deformations. On the inside of the arm here, we really want quite a tight fold. What I'm going to do is I'm going to firm it up a fair bit for the forearm bone that I have currently selected. And then go back and test it with our piece of animation to see what I get. So we're getting a bit nicer, tighter fold there, but we're going to have some problems probably in here. Go back and select the upper arm bone, and now I can do some painting in there. It's a back and forth thing. Basically, you're sitting there playing with it back and forth to try and find the best solutions. Now, so that you can actually get rid of all of your interface here, I've actually written a couple of scripts to make your life a bit easier. One of them is skin paint mode on off. You can get this from my website at paulneal.com and install it and drop it in your favorite quad menu, and it just turns on the paint weights button for you, so you don't have to keep going back and clicking on it all the time. So again, we can go through and we can do some nice weighting on the character. And again, this is one of those cases where taking it right down low might be what you want. Very small changes at a time. We want to try and get a nice tight bend within here, but try and make it as natural as possible. Our human body is a bit different. It will we have skin sliding and bones and tendons that help the skin slide over the surface and get pushed out of the way. That's not going to happen automatically with a straight skinning solution in any package. We're going to try and fake that in other ways later on, but you'll find that it can be actually very, very time consuming and sometimes simply unnecessary depending on the kind of character you have. Again, this one is a much more human looking character with muscles and bones protruding, and we'll probably want to actually make it look like we're getting skin pushed out of the way and whatnot, sliding over the surface to make it look a little more natural. It also, of course, matters how close are you actually going to get to the character. Will you ever actually see it? So with the paint weights, we're just going to have to keep playing back and forth. Like I say, this character is going to take some time to actually skin properly. I often see people, especially in schools when I've taught, they rig the character, they struggle through all that, they have this mesh built, and then they think they're going to skin the character in a couple hours and be on their merry way to animate. Fact of the matter is that just isn't what happens. It takes a lot of time to properly skin a character and get the skin working. Now, again, if it's a simple tubular character, sort of cartoony character, it could take me an hour, half an hour sometimes to skin it. If it's a character like this, I could be working on the skin for a week, actually trying to get it to do everything I might want to do. You never know how long it's going to take. Just saying I'm going to skin the character. You actually have to know what you're skinning for and what the character is going to be like.